Emma Thompson stood on the rickety wooden platform of Ravenwood's train station, her gaze fixed on the desolate streets that stretched before her. The chilly breeze tugged at the edges of her coat, sending shivers down her spine. She clutched her notepad and pen to her chest, taking in the eerie scene with a mixture of trepidation and curiosity. Her heart pounded in anticipation as she stepped off the platform, her boots crunching on the gravel path. Ravenwood was a town draped in fog, like a widow shrouded in mourning. The gray skies above seemed perpetually overcast, casting a somber pall over the old Victorian homes and decrepit storefronts. Every breath Emma took was thick with dampness, the scent of mildew and decay clinging to the air like a stubborn ghost. As she walked through the town, the silence weighed heavily on her shoulders. It was as if the very air was holding its breath, waiting for something to shatter the stillness. She noticed the townspeople, their eyes downcast and their movements slow, as if weighed down by an invisible burden. Their whispered conversations ceased as she passed, and their gazes followed her like shadows. A bell chimed above her as she entered the town's small diner, the warmth of the room providing a brief respite from the chilling air outside. She slid onto a stool at the counter, her fingers wrapping around a steaming cup of coffee that the waitress, Martha, placed before her. "You're not from around here, are you?" Martha asked, her eyes narrowing slightly as she wiped down the counter with a damp cloth. Emma shook her head, her lips curving into a polite smile. "No, I'm a journalist. I've come to write about Ravenwood's unique history and the strange whispers that have been plaguing the town for generations." Martha paused, her cloth hovering over the countertop. "You're interested in the whispers?" she asked, her tone cautious. "That's not something most folks around here like to talk about." "I understand," Emma replied, her voice gentle. "But I'm hoping to get to the heart of the mystery. Perhaps in understanding the whispers, we can help put the town's troubled past to rest." The waitress regarded her for a moment, then sighed. "You might want to talk to Evelyn. She's the town historian, lives down on Sycamore Lane. Just be careful, miss. Some things in this town are better left alone." Emma thanked Martha and left the diner, her mind buzzing with anticipation. As she made her way down Sycamore Lane, she noticed the tangled branches of the ancient trees overhead, their gnarled limbs reaching out like twisted fingers. The scent of damp earth and decaying leaves filled her nostrils, and she shuddered at the eerie atmosphere that seemed to permeate the very ground beneath her feet. She found Evelyn's house nestled between two towering oaks, its wooden exterior worn and weathered with age. The old woman answered her knock, her eyes clouded with suspicion as she peered at Emma through the crack in the door. "I'm here to learn about the whispers," Emma said, her voice firm yet respectful. "Martha from the diner suggested I speak with you." Evelyn's eyes widened. Then she nodded slowly. "Very well," she murmured, stepping back to allow Emma inside. The historian's home was a treasure trove of dusty books and yellowed newspapers, the shelves and tables groaning under the weight of the town's forgotten memories. Evelyn led her to a small sitting room, gesturing for Emma to take a seat in the worn velvet armchair. "Tell me," Evelyn began, her voice raspy with age, "why are you so interested in the whispers? Most people who come to this town are only drawn to the macabre and morbid. Are you any different?" Emma hesitated, her fingers tapping her notepad nervously. "I've always been fascinated by the unknown, by the mysteries that lurk in the shadows. I believe that by shedding light on these mysteries, we can better understand the world around us. And perhaps in doing so, we can help heal the wounds of the past." in the shadows. Emma considered Evelyn's words, a shiver running down her spine. Despite the old woman's warnings, she couldn't shake her determination to uncover the truth behind the whispers. She thanked Evelyn for her time and left the historian's home, her mind racing with possibilities. As evening fell, Emma found herself wandering through the town's cemetery, the rows of crooked headstones casting long shadows in the fading light. She paused before a particularly ancient grave, its inscription worn away by time and weather. It was here, she had learned, that the whispers were said to be the loudest. She closed her eyes, straining her ears for any hint of the eerie sounds that had haunted her thoughts for so long. But all she heard was the wind rustling through the branches overhead, the mournful sigh of the world around her. As she turned to leave, a sudden movement caught her eye, and she glimpsed a figure standing at the edge of the cemetery, shrouded in darkness. The stranger's eyes met hers, a flicker of recognition passing between them before he vanished into the shadows. The encounter left her with a sense of unease that followed her all the way back to her rented room above the town's only tavern. She lay in bed, the flickering light of a single candle casting eerie shapes on the walls, her thoughts consumed. The sun was a pale, watery orb in the sky, casting a sickly light over the town as Emma awoke the following morning. She rose from her bed, her limbs heavy with fatigue, the whispers from her dreams still echoing in her ears. She pulled on her clothes and descended the narrow staircase to the tavern below, her stomach churning with a mix of hunger and apprehension. The aroma of fresh coffee and frying bacon filled the air as she took a seat at a corner table, her eyes scanning the room. The locals huddled in small groups, their voices hushed and their faces drawn. Emma couldn't help but wonder if the whispers haunted their dreams as well. As she sipped her coffee, she considered her next course of action. Evelyn had given her much to think about, but she knew that she would need to dig deeper if she was to uncover the truth. She made a mental list of the places she wanted to visit, the town library, the church, and perhaps the site of the tragedy that had first heralded the whispers all those years ago. Her thoughts were interrupted by the arrival of a tall, dark-haired man who took the seat across from her. His sharp, angular features were marred by a small scar that ran down the side of his face, and his eyes held a haunted, distant quality. "I saw you at the cemetery last night," he said, his voice low and measured. "You're looking for answers, just like me." Emma regarded him warily, her fingers tightening around her coffee cup. "Who are you? And what do you know about the whispers?" The man hesitated, then extended a hand. "My name is Lucas. I came to Ravenwood several months ago, drawn by the whispers that have haunted me since childhood. I believe there's a connection between the whispers and the tragedy that occurred here nearly a century ago." Emma's eyes widened in surprise. "You've heard the whispers too? Do you have any idea what they might be?" Lucas shook his head, his eyes darkening. "Not yet, but I have a theory that they are a manifestation of the town's collective guilt. A dark energy that feeds on the suffering of those who have lived and died here." Emma considered his words, her mind racing with possibilities. "And what do you think we can do to put an end to the whispers?" "I don't know," Lucas admitted, his gaze distant. "But I believe the answer lies in understanding the tragedy that birthed them. We must delve into the heart of the darkness that has cast its shadow over this town for generations." Determined to uncover the truth, Emma and Lucas set out to explore the town together. Their first stop was the small, musty library, its shelves overflowing with crumbling volumes and faded newspapers. They found the librarian, Mr. Harker, hunched over a desk in the corner, his watery blue eyes peering at them from behind a pair of wire-rimmed glasses. "What can I help you with?" he asked, his voice thin and reedy. Emma and Lucas exchanged a glance, then Emma spoke. "We're researching the history of the town, specifically the tragedy that occurred nearly a century ago. We were hoping you could point us in the direction of any relevant materials." Mr. Harker's eyes flickered with a mix of curiosity and apprehension. "You're interested in the whispers, I presume?" Emma nodded. "Yes, we believe there may be a connection between the tragedy and the whispers that continue to haunt the town." The librarian hesitated, then sighed. "Very well, I can show you what we have, but I must warn you, some of the information you seek is quite disturbing." Emma and Lucas followed Mr. Harker through the maze of bookshelves, their footsteps muffled by the thick layer of dust that coated the floor. The librarian led them to a secluded corner, where several bound volumes of newspapers and a handful of tattered books awaited them. "These should give you a better understanding of the events that transpired during that dark time," Mr. Harker said, his voice hushed. "But please, be careful." As Emma and Lucas dove deeper into the past, they discovered a pattern of inexplicable events and tragic occurrences that seemed to plague the town. Fires, floods, and unexplained deaths had marred its history, leaving a trail of sorrow and fear in their wake. "These events can't be a coincidence," Emma murmured, her brow furrowed in concentration. "There must be some connection between the tragedy and the whispers. Some key that will help us unlock the truth." Lucas nodded, his eyes haunted. "The whispers are more than just echoes of the past. They're a living, breathing force, one that feeds on the pain and suffering of this town. We need to find a way to break the cycle, to put an end to the whispers once and for all." With heavy hearts, Emma and Lucas left the library, their minds reeling with the information they had uncovered. As they walked through the town, they couldn't help but notice the subtle changes that seemed to have taken hold. The whispers had grown more insistent, their ghostly voices invading the very air they breathed. Their next stop was the church, its crumbling facade and broken stained glass windows a testament to the ravages of time. They found the priest, Father Matthews, kneeling in prayer before the altar, his gaunt face etched with lines of sorrow and despair. When they approached, the priest looked up, his eyes filled with a strange mix of hope and fear. "You've come to learn about the whispers, haven't you?" Emma nodded, her voice barely more than a whisper itself. "Yes, Father. We believe there's a connection between the whispers and the tragedy that occurred here nearly a century ago. Can you tell us anything that might help us understand the nature of the whispers, or how to put an end to them?" Father Matthews hesitated, then beckoned them to join him in the small, dimly lit office at the back of the church. There, surrounded by the dusty relics of the past, he told them of his own experiences with the Whispers, of the sleepless nights, and the relentless torment they had inflicted upon him. "I've come to believe that the Whispers are a manifestation of the town's collective guilt and pain," he said, his voice tremulous. "They're a reminder of the suffering we've endured, and of the darkness that still lingers in the shadows." Emma and Lucas listened with rapt attention, their hearts heavy with the weight of the priest's words. They asked about the miners who had perished in the tragedy, and Father Matthew spoke of their families, of the wives and children left behind to grieve and struggle in the wake of their loss. "You see," he explained, his eyes filled with a mixture of sorrow and determination, "the Whispers are not just the echoes of the dead. They're also the cries of the living, the anguished voices of those who have been touched by the darkness that haunts this town." As they left the church, Emma and Lucas knew that their quest was far from over. The Whispers that haunted the town of Ravenwood were more than just a mystery to be solved. They were a living testament to the pain and suffering that had shaped the community for generations. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long, twisted shadows over the town, Emma and Lucas stood on the outskirts of the woods that bordered Ravenwood. They knew that the key to understanding the Whispers lay within the dark, tangled depths of the forest, and they steeled themselves for the journey that lay ahead. "We may not be able to erase the past," Emma said, her voice steady despite the fear that clenched her heart, "but perhaps we can find a way to ease the burden of the Whispers, to bring some measure." As Emma and Lucas ventured deeper into the woods, they found themselves enveloped in a silence that was both oppressive and unnerving. The air seemed to hang heavy with a sense of foreboding, and the gnarled branches of the ancient trees reached out to them like twisted, grasping fingers. Despite the fear that clawed at the edges of their minds, they pressed onward, their resolve fueled by the hope that they could put an end to the Whispers that haunted the town of Ravenwood. They walked for hours, the forest growing darker and more forbidding with each passing moment, until they found themselves standing before a narrow, winding path that led further into the heart of the woods. Lucas hesitated, his gaze locked on the shadowy trail that lay before them. "This path, it feels as though it's been waiting for us, calling us deeper into the darkness." Emma nodded, her heart pounding in her chest. "It's the only way forward. We have to face whatever lies at the end of this path if we're to put an end to the Whispers and bring peace to the town." With a deep, steadying breath, they stepped onto the narrow trail, their footsteps muffled by the thick layer of leaves and moss that carpeted the ground. The path twisted and turned, leading them deeper into the shadows, and the Whispers grew louder with each passing moment, their ghostly voices taunting and tormenting them. The sun had long since vanished below the horizon, leaving them to navigate by the faint silvery light of the moon that filtered through the twisted branches overhead. They walked for what felt like hours, the path seemingly endless, until they finally emerged into a small clearing, the ground covered in a thick carpet of ivy and ferns. In the center of the clearing stood a gnarled, ancient oak tree, its massive trunk twisted and contorted by the passage of time. At the base of the tree lay a weathered, moss-covered stone, its surface etched with a series of intricate, arcane symbols that seemed to dance and shift in the moonlight. Emma approached the stone, her fingers tracing the intricate carvings that adorned its surface. These symbols, they're unlike anything I've ever seen before. They seem to be a mixture of ancient runes and some other unknown language. Lucas studied the markings, his brow furrowed in concentration. They must hold some clue to the whispers, some key to understanding the darkness that has haunted this town for generations. As they examined the stone, they were suddenly aware of a presence in the clearing, a figure that seemed to materialize from the shadows themselves. The figure was a tall, gaunt man, his face etched with lines of suffering and sorrow. His eyes held a depth of sadness that seemed to echo the whispers themselves. "I am the guardian of the whispers," the man said, his voice barely more than a ghostly rasp. "I have watched over the town of Ravenwood for centuries, bearing witness to the pain and suffering that have shaped its people." Emma and Lucas exchanged a glance, their hearts pounding in their chests. "Are you the source of the whispers?" Emma asked, her voice barely audible above the pounding of her heart. The guardian shook his head, his gaze locked on the stone at the base of the tree. "I am not their source, but their keeper. The whispers are the echoes of the pain and suffering that have haunted this town for generations. They are a manifestation of the collective guilt and anguish of its people, a reminder of the darkness that lingers in the shadows." He gestured to the stone, his eyes filled with a mixture of sorrow and determination. "This stone is the heart." As they worked, Emma's fingers traced the outline of one particular symbol, a series of interlocking circles that seemed to pulse with a strange, otherworldly energy. As her finger completed the final circle, a sudden surge of power raced through her, and she felt a deep, primal connection to the stone and the whispers it contained. Her vision swam, and she found herself standing in the heart of the forest, the trees around her ablaze with a ghostly, ethereal fire. The whispers echoed through the woods, their voices filled with pain and fear, and Emma felt the weight of their suffering bearing down upon her. She saw the faces of the miners who had perished in the tragedy, their eyes filled with despair as they drew their final breaths. She felt the anguish of the families they had left behind, their hearts shattered by grief and loss. And she saw the darkness that had lingered in the town for generations, a malevolent force that fed on the pain and suffering of its people. Emma's vision faded, and she found herself back in the clearing, her hand still resting on the stone. She shared her vision with Lucas and the guardian, her voice shaking with the weight of the truth she had uncovered. "The whispers are not just the echoes of the past," she said, her eyes filled with a mixture of sorrow and determination. "They are the manifestations of the darkness that has haunted this town for generations. We must find a way to banish the darkness, to release the town from its grip." The guardian nodded, his eyes filled with a flicker of hope. "You have seen the truth, and now you must find the strength to confront it. The key lies in understanding the symbols that adorn the stone, in unlocking the secrets that have been hidden for generations." Together they worked to decipher the symbols, their minds racing as they pieced together the fragments of the ancient language. As they worked, they began to uncover the story of the stone, of the ritual that had been performed centuries ago to contain the darkness that threatened to consume the town. The ritual had required a sacrifice, a willing soul to bear the burden of the whispers and act as their guardian. The guardian had willingly taken on this burden, trapping the darkness within the stone and binding it to the heart of the forest. But the darkness had not been banished completely. It had merely been contained, its power diminished, but not destroyed. The whispers were a reminder of the darkness that still lingered in the shadows, a warning to those who sought to unlock the secrets of the stone. With the truth finally revealed, Emma and Lucas knew what they had to do. They would perform the ritual once more, using the power of the symbols to banish the darkness and release the town from the grip of the whispers. But this time, they would need to find a way to ensure that the darkness could never return, that the cycle of suffering would be broken once and for all. The guardian guided them through the ritual, his voice filled with a mixture of hope and sadness. "I have carried this burden for centuries, but I know that it is time for me to pass it on. You must be the ones to break the cycle, to banish the darkness and bring peace to the town of Ravenwood." As they prepared for the ritual, Emma and Lucas gathered the necessary materials, their hearts heavy with the knowledge of the responsibility they were about to undertake. They lit a fire in the center of the clearing, the flames casting eerie, flickering shadows on the twisted branches overhead. Together, they chanted the ancient words, their voices joining with the whispers as they sought to unravel the power of the stone. The symbols began to glow with a strange, otherworldly light, their intricate patterns dancing and shifting as the ritual took hold. As they reached the climax of the ritual, the guardian stepped forward, his eyes filled with a mixture of sorrow and determination. "I will make the final sacrifice to ensure that the But they also knew that they had brought an end to the cycle of suffering, that they had given the people of the town a chance to heal and move forward. Hand in hand, they walked back through the woods, their hearts filled with a mixture of sorrow and hope. As they emerged from the forest and made their way back to the town, they found the people of Ravenwood waiting for them. their eyes filled with a mixture of curiosity and awe. Word of their quest had spread, and the townspeople had gathered to learn the truth about the whispers that had haunted them for generations. Emma and Lucas shared their story, their voices filled with the weight of the truth they had uncovered. They spoke of the guardian and his sacrifice, of the darkness that had been banished, and of the hope that the town could now begin to heal. As they finished their tale, the people of Ravenwood stood in silence, their hearts filled with a mixture of grief and gratitude. They knew that the whispers would forever be In the days that followed the banishment of the darkness, the town of Ravenwood began to heal. The heavy cloud of fear and despair that had hung over the people for generations slowly began to lift, replaced by a newfound sense of hope and unity. Emma and Lucas found themselves at the center of this transformation, their actions having brought about the end of the whispers and the beginning of a new chapter in the town's history. They were met with gratitude and admiration, but also a sense of expectation, as the people of Ravenwood looked to them for guidance in rebuilding their community. Together, they set about the task of helping the town heal, their hearts filled with determination and hope. They worked alongside the townspeople, repairing homes and businesses that had fallen into disrepair, and tending to the emotional wounds that had been inflicted by the whispers. As they worked, they discovered that their connection to the stone had not been entirely severed. Though the whispers had been silenced, they could still sense the echoes of the pain and suffering that had been absorbed by the stone over the centuries. This connection allowed them to better understand the needs of the people they were helping, and gave them a unique insight into the healing process. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm golden glow over the town, Emma and Lucas sat together on the steps of the church, their bodies weary from the day's work. They spoke of their experiences and the progress they had made, their hearts heavy with the weight of the responsibility they had assumed. "It's amazing how much the town has changed in just a few short days," Emma said, her voice filled with a mixture of exhaustion and pride. "I can hardly believe that we were able to make such a difference." Lucas nodded, his gaze sweeping over the town as he took in the changes that had been made. "It's been a long journey, but I truly believe that we've set Ravenwood on a path to healing. The people have come together, united by their shared experience and their determination to build a better future." As they spoke, a group of children ran past, their laughter filling the air with a sense of joy and hope that had been all but absent in the days before the banishment of the darkness. Emma and Lucas exchanged a smile, their hearts warmed by the knowledge that they had played a part in bringing happiness back to the town. One day, as they were working to repair a damaged storefront, a young woman named Sarah approached them. Her eyes were filled with a mixture of gratitude and sorrow, and she clutched a worn, leather-bound journal tightly to her chest. "I wanted to thank you for what you've done for our town," she said, her voice trembling with emotion. "My family, we were deeply affected by the whispers. My father was one of the miners who perished in the tragedy, and my mother, she was never the same after he was gone." Tears filled her eyes as she held out the journal, offering it to Emma and Lucas. "This belonged to my father, It's filled with his thoughts and experiences from his time working in the mines. I thought that perhaps it might help you better understand the pain and suffering that the whispers represented. Emma took the journal, her fingers gently tracing the worn edges of the leather cover. She could feel the weight of the memories it contained, the echoes of the pain and loss that had been absorbed by the stone. She knew that in order to truly heal the town, they would need to confront and understand the past. In the days that followed, they delved into the journal, their hearts aching as they read the stories of the miners who had toiled beneath the earth, their lives forever changed by the tragedy that had befallen them. They learned of the dangers they had faced, the moments of camaraderie. As he spoke, the people of Ravenwood listened, their hearts filled with a sense of unity and purpose. They knew that the path to healing would not be easy, that there would be challenges and setbacks along the way, but they also knew that they were no longer alone, that they had each other and the support of Emma and Lucas to help them through the difficult times. As the days turned into weeks and the weeks into months, the town of Ravenwood continued to heal and grow. The people worked together to rebuild their homes and businesses, to support one another in their moments of grief and despair, and to find joy in the simple pleasures of life. Emma and Lucas became integral members of the community, their connection to the stone and the whispers allowing them to guide the people of Ravenwood along the path to healing. They continued to explore the history of the town, uncovering the secrets and stories that had been hidden for generations, and using their newfound knowledge to help the people understand and overcome the shadows of their past. The people of Ravenwood learned to embrace their history, to honor the sacrifices that had been made, and to find strength in the knowledge that they had overcome the darkness that had once threatened to consume them. They held festivals and gatherings to celebrate their achievements, their hearts filled with a sense of pride and unity that had once seemed impossible. As the years passed, the town of Ravenwood continued to grow and thrive, its people united by their shared experiences and their determination to build a better future. The whispers became a distant memory, a reminder of the darkness that had once been, but also a testament to the strength and resilience of the human spirit. Emma and Lucas remained at the heart of the community, their connection to the stone and the whispers a source of strength and wisdom that guided the town through the challenges and triumphs of the years that followed. And as they stood together, hand in hand, watching the sun set over the town they had helped to heal, Years later, the town of Ravenwood had become a symbol of hope and resilience, a testament to the power of unity and love in the face of adversity. People from far and wide traveled to the town, seeking to learn from its history and to understand the miraculous transformation that had taken place. Emma and Lucas, now elders in the community, continued to share the story of their journey with all who would listen, their hearts filled with a sense of pride and purpose. They knew that the lessons they had learned were not meant to be kept secret, that the knowledge and wisdom they had gained was meant to be shared, to help others find their own path to healing. As time went on, they began to train a new generation of guardians, young men and women who were dedicated to preserving the legacy of Ravenwood and ensuring that the darkness could never return. They passed on their connection to the stone, teaching their apprentices how to harness its power and use it to heal and protect their town. Through their guidance and mentorship, the new guardians learned the importance of compassion, understanding, and unity, the values that had allowed Ravenwood to overcome the darkness and become a beacon of hope in a world that had once been filled with fear and despair. Eventually, Emma and Lucas knew that their time was drawing to a close, that they had fulfilled their purpose and passed on their legacy to a new generation of protectors. They found solace in the knowledge that their work would continue, that the town of Ravenwood would remain a symbol of hope and resilience for generations to come. As they lay side by side, their hands entwined and their hearts filled with love, they whispered their final farewells to one another, their souls ready to embark on the next great adventure. And as the sun set over the town they had helped to heal, their spirits soared, carried on the wings of the whispers that had once been a source of fear and pain, but now echoed with the promise of hope, love, and unity. In the years that followed, the town of Ravenwood continued to thrive, its people bound together by the